Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is my co-host. Do not adjust your sets. That is not Patton Oswalt's cousin. Tim Oswald. Cobblepot. Have you ever thought about playing the Penguin, Tim? Has that ever come up in your career path?
No. I mean, I would gladly do anything for money.
Because Jonah Hill's out apparently, so you got a chance.
Okay.
I'm just saying, they're casting this new Batman movie. They've got Catwoman now, they've got Riddler. I feel like you could slide in there as the Penguin, or possibly Condiment King. I see you as a Condiment King, actually. I'm thinking about it.
I mean, for me, it's Bane or bust. I don't think there's any other role I'd be suited to play.
Bane?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, we're very similar.
Oh yeah, you're totally a Mexican giant muscular lucha libre wrestler. Yes, who strikes fear into the hearts of every man he walks past.
Yeah. That sounds like me.
We're a horror movie podcast, and every week we get together, we talk about horror films. But it is October, it's the October-thon, and that means that we've been doing episodes every single day. And this episode is the final of 3 vote episodes, because every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, we have our patrons at the $5 tier and up vote between 4 films that we'll do for the following month. But for the October-thon, we put up multiple votes. We put up 3, one of which was public, and 2 of which were exclusive to Patreon. And this was the final vote. This was 4 Asian films, and the winner, of course, as you see in the title, was A Tale of Two Sisters. So that's what we're going to talk about. We'll start spoiler free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers, and that is what we'll do. So, so this is a film that I had seen before a long time ago. I had the DVD way back in the early 2000s when it was a thing in Tartan Asia Extreme. We're putting out DVDs every other week. And I was mopping them all up because I thought it was really cool, and there was a lot of good stuff in there. And it's directed by Kim Jee-woon, who actually I have seen a few films of his. He went on to do A Bittersweet Life, which was a thriller that he did after this. He did a western comedy called The Good, the Bad, the Weird, and he then did what I would call his best film, I Saw the Devil, in 2010.
Oh, yeah, so, that's great. Yeah.
He did also unfortunately tried to make movies in the West with The Last Stand in 2013, which was Arnold Schwarzenegger's return to cinema, and it was really mediocre to bad. So it's not all gold, but he has done some great stuff along the way. So this is one of his earlier stuff. He did a couple before this, or actually did about 4 before this, but Tale of Two Sisters is definitely the first one that I knew of him. So yes, have you seen this before, Timmy?
Actually, I thought I did, but when I was watching it, really nothing about it seemed familiar. So I think maybe I just had heard about it so much, because like you were saying, around that time, Asian horror movies and stuff were becoming so popular that there's just this big deluge of movies coming to us. So maybe I just kind of had seen the box a bunch and just assumed I watched it, or maybe I watched it and just forgot everything about it. But
it was in that glut with Into the Mirror, Phone, Pulse. Obviously the Grudge and Ring movies were in there. Dark Water, a whole bunch of them.
Dark Water, all that stuff. And then I don't know if I'd actually seen it before. I did know the ending though, because I think just recently, I was talking to someone, and they were talking about a spoiler in another movie, and then they basically when they mentioned it, they're it's in A Tale of Two Sisters, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be watching that soon, actually, but whatever.
Yeah. I have to admit, I didn't remember a whole lot of it. I did remember the ending, because it's the big noble thing. Although I didn't remember every facet of it, because I got a little confused at the start, or early on, because I was like, okay, I remember this part of the ending, and then something else. I was like, wait, this doesn't quite jive with that, though. It made sense, obviously, by the time I got there, but obviously we won't talk about that until we get to spoilers. But it is worth mentioning this was remade as The Uninvited in the US in 2009. Really? Yes.
I did not realize that.
What do you mean? We just did our top 50 worst. It was on my list. And I said it was a remake of Tale of Two Sisters.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention.
God damn it, Tim. God damn it. So the plot of A Tale of Two Sisters is that we have these two
sisters.
I was going to say teenagers. Two teenage sisters who one of them has just been at a hospital for therapy reasons, and she comes home and her father obviously brings her home, and her stepmother's there, and there's a lot of like backstory with like what happened to the mother, what exactly is her condition, what was her problems, is she starting to go crazy, is there creepy things actually happening, that kind of thing. Definitely a big sort of, it's one of these horror movies where a lot of it is family drama, a lot of it is the building tension of what the characters are doing with each other and how they're treating each other, as much as it is about, you know, spooky things happening, if there indeed is any. So that's kind of the gist of it. I kind of leave it there because, like I say, it's hard to talk about a lot of the plot of this one without going full spoilers, but that's the gist of it. So I will ask the question, Tim, did you enjoy A Tale of Two Sisters?
Honestly, I did not really enjoy it that much. I definitely wouldn't say it's a poorly made movie. Like, you know, I do think it's directed well, and like, you know, the performances are good. And you know, funny enough, like I feel like because we were talking about Sam Raimi earlier when we were doing like the news stuff. And I don't know, I feel like there's like some Raimi-isms here in some of the directing every now and again, which I thought was cool. But like you said, it's a lot of family drama. It's just very melodramatic. I think it's a little too long, like almost 2 hours. It feels like it could have been shaved down.
That's the death curse for horror movies. It's been over 90 minutes.
Yeah. But I mean, when there is, like, I wouldn't say there's a ton of horror stuff in here, but like, I mean, you know, obviously, and I mean, like, you know, horror stuff, like, yeah, there's obviously like real, you know, like dramatic horror, I guess, like, you know, you would say, but like, when there are horror scenes, you know, I do think those are done very well, but there's, you know, kind of few and far between. So, I don't know. I wouldn't say I necessarily hated it, but I wasn't like ecstatic about it either, especially for a movie that again, I feel like it's something that, like, you know, people do talk about and bring up as, you know, like a really good, like, you know, movie that, like, oh man, you got to see. But yeah, so I don't know, I was not over the moon about it.
The enthusiasm is screaming off the page. I'm not actually that in much disagreement with you. I'm kind of lukewarm on it, and I think it's a shame because I do think it's very well directed. There's a little touches in the direction all over the place that I really liked. And you said the performances were fine, and I agree they're solid. There's nothing wrong with those. I think ultimately, I just think the script and the premise is just not super exciting, and it is kind of lacking a lot of or not a lot of, but like more horror stuff, more horror focused elements. I do think it is too long, like you said. I also think it's kind of weird, like the ending. There's two sort of big, like sort of 10-minute chunks at the end, which I think are the wrong way around.
Yes.
As bizarre as that sounds, there's like two 10-minute chunks that I would swap around, which is weird. But so there was that.
Like, I think I was very surprised when I thought the movie was ending, and then I was looking at how much time I got left, and there was like about 10 minutes or so left, and I was like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Because it does this thing where there's like I think it's a spoiler. It says a big flashback at the end. But for some reason, the flashback comes last and not before, like the sort of the end of the story. And I feel like swapping them, giving us the context with the flashback, and then hitting us with the end of the story would have had more impact. Instead, it kind of goes for this bittersweet thing at the end. And I don't know, this is weird. Yeah. it's frustrating because I do think there's a lot of little directorial touches that I really like, especially when they first arrive home and we were first introduced to the stepmother. I think her introduction is really good because it does this thing where there's like a POV shot from her sort of coming towards the girls, and it's really quick and kind of intrusive, and there's like a close-up of their hands because they're holding hands and they sort of like clench each other's hands really tightly, and like it really sets up right away that, okay, this woman's presence is a cause of tension and stress for these two girls. Like, it made sense, and it was telling me things. The direction was communicating things in a really, really smart little ways. Not necessarily subtle ways, but ways that really worked in the style that it was establishing. But as it went on, because some movies we go through kind of plot beat by plot beat when we get to the spoilers, and some we don't. And I think the ones that we don't tend to be a bit more like this, where a lot of it kind of blurs together, and it's harder to kind of distinguish it.
Yeah. There's a few scenes that stand out, but then there's like, and again, that's when there is like a very specific like horror element or something to them. But then it feels like there's so many scenes of like, just like quiet moping, or like just throwing yourself on the bed and like pouting and stuff, and again, like it's fine to kind of set some of that stuff up, but then after a while, like in a 2-hour movie, it just gets to be a little bit much when they kind of just all like is coming together.
And it is pretty much entirely set in a house. Like, once they arrive home at the start, we never really leave there. There's like one scene in the car at one point. A little bit of the flashback maybe takes place elsewhere. That's pretty much it. And that's not really a complaint, that's not a problem, but it does mean that, like, okay, so what's happening in the house that's keeping us engaged? And I do feel like, because some of the horror stuff is quite effective. There's actually one moment that felt very Silent Hill to me, bizarrely, and I thought, okay, that was kind of neat. But the horror stuff almost feels like it takes it back. See, because I honestly thought when it got to kind of the reveal of what was going on and what was happening here, I actually started to think, was there any real horror stuff at all? And there was one moment, because there's a character, there's like, at one point the uncle comes to visit with his wife, and that wife sees something, and that was kind of a separate character who wasn't really a part of anything, and I'm like, well, there had to be something because she saw something. And so when the horror kind of did bleed into it a little bit towards the end, I thought it almost felt like an afterthought. It felt like tacked on. Like, I'm like, yeah. I don't know if we actually need like a real horror element. And I guess I'm spoiling that there is one, but it felt weird to me that there was. I thought, nah, the way that's kind of played out, I almost feel like we don't need like a real horror thing. But I don't know. Maybe that's a weird complaint in a horror movie. But, like,
no. Like, I mean, well. Yeah, obviously we love horror, but not everything has to be a horror movie. Like, sometimes a story might be better served if it's not. And then obviously you can't go into too much before spoilers, but I will just say, once by the end of the movie, once everything that's happened or something, it did feel very cliche to me. But I mean, to be fair, at this time maybe that wasn't as such a big thing. But watching it now, it does feel like, all right, this is definitely the kind of surprise or whatever that we've seen before in movies. I
think it'd been done a little before this, but yeah, it feels very old hat now, and I've definitely seen it done better for sure.
Yeah,
and other things. So yeah, I will just go straight into spoilers. I don't think there's a whole lot to say, spoiler free. At this point, like, I don't know what we dance around. Really, so full spoilers for A Tale of Two Sisters from here on out. So let's talk about what the reveal is, because the main character of Sumi, the older sister, so I remembered that her sister isn't real, right? I remembered that from seeing it before.
She's dead is the... Like, she was a real person.
Oh, she was. She was real at one point, yes. But like the idea that she's not really here in the movie, and right away at the start of the movie, when the dad's like sort of like he stopped the car and he gets out and says, "Oh, you coming out?" He says it's singular, and I was like, okay, right away I'm noticing how he's talking to her, and it's kind of setting up for this reveal. What did confuse me though is that the stepmom, Eun-ju, she talks to both of them, and I thought, oh, that's weird. I don't remember why this is a thing, because I'd forgotten that she also ends up being part of Sumi. Sumi is actually all three characters. Well, she never actually like pretends to be her sister. Her sister's like always just there as a secondary character that she talks to, whereas her stepmom, who's not really her stepmom, Eun-ju, she actually like swaps roles with her, because the dad talks to both of them, but he never talks to both of them at the same time. It's actually very reminiscent of a TV show from recent years that I don't want to spoil, but I don't think you've seen it.
Okay. Probably some dumb Star Trek show.
No, not Star Trek. No. All right.
Captain Picard is also the Wrath of Khan or something.
That wasn't even Picard that was in that movie, you prick. So, what do you think of the reveal? What do you think of the twist?
I mean, I feel like all right, so obviously, I feel like this kind of came to prominence with like a lot of movies in the nightclub or in the 90s, like, I mean, spoilers if you haven't seen these movies, but I think it's pretty well known, but like, stuff like, Fight Club or The Sixth Sense, where, they have these reveals where, oh, this person's actually multiple characters, or this person's dead, or whatever, blah, blah. And I feel like there's a couple of movies where it works, but I feel like so much stuff after that feels like it's just there to have a twist. Like, I don't know. It doesn't like it doesn't do much. Like I think you have to have a really good story to back it up, and I feel like this story doesn't necessarily like need a twist. Like you could have just a girl, dealing like with like the guilt, over like her, sister's death and stuff, and maybe start seeing a ghost, and I think that's enough to warrant. A story versus like having to have this kind of twist. And it does, I don't know, I feel like it does make it like a little muddled where then you kind of go back and start thinking like, okay, so how is this happening and stuff, and then it is kind of weird to be like, all right, so she's like doing all this crazy stuff in this house, like, and like no one, like, the dad is there, but he doesn't really seem like he's like noticing it too much or being like too involved. Like I feel like we don't see a ton of him.
He gets frustrated with her constantly, whether he's talking to like the daughter version or the stepmom version of her, right? Yeah. But I mean, this is both a positive and a negative. It's a positive in the sense that watching the movie, I actually got very early that the stepmom was also fake, or was also her, because of the way that it was just the way he was interacting with her. It always felt like he was only talking to one person. Whenever at dinner, it always felt like he was speaking to one person. So it didn't come as a surprise. And it really made me want to like watch it without knowing anything, because it felt really obvious to me the entire film that like there was only one person in the house with him the whole time. It never felt like there was really three other people. It just the way he interacted with people just felt different. So I don't know, but at the same time though, it's a good thing, because if let's say the twist works for you and you didn't see it coming, if you go back and watch it, all of his interactions with her do work. Sure. From his perspective, you can see that he's only speaking to one person. You can see that he's not addressing multiple people, and that's okay. I guess. I don't know. It's one of these weird things where the twist is so old hat at this point that I have a hard time like getting super excited about it unless it's done really well from a thematic point of view. Because I'm going to spoil something here. I need to talk about something else a little bit. So I'm going to say spoilers for a recent TV show, for season 1 of a TV show. I don't have to go any further on season 1, but I'm going to spoil Mr. Robot, because Mr. Robot has a twist where the Mr. Robot character turns out to just be part of Elliot's mind, or he's in his head, or it's kind of like how Sumi is with her stepmother, in that she'll switch personalities and still talk. Both will talk to people. So in a scene where it was trying to trick us, they'd both be there, and they'd both talk in the same scene, but it would always sort of like switch between them. They'd never no one would ever address both of them, kind of thing. But that was done so well in that show, and it was also done in the way where it was like they expect you to figure it out. So by the time it revealed it, it was like, you knew all along. That's literally one of the narrated lines, is "you knew all along, didn't you?" And then he kind of goes into it. I feel like that has so much great character that comes from it. Okay, why is he imagining this person? What does he mean to him? Because he has this confidence as this other character, whereas here we don't have something like that, where she is she gets to be different. I guess you could argue she gets to be like, I don't know, because if you look at it in the sense that she is violent to herself, because she keeps thinking that her stepmom is hurting her sister, right? Because that's like a whole plot point at one point. Her little sister has like scratches and bruises, and she's like, oh, she's hurting her. We find out that she's basically just doing that to herself, right? That's what's really happening, is that she's doing it to herself, and it's like different parts of her personality. That is an interesting idea, don't get me wrong, as a way of her like not seeing it as hurting herself, that she doesn't see herself as being in pain. That is something, but I don't know if this is fascinating to me as like, okay, she's able to achieve something by being this other character. She has this confidence with her. It's more of a dark version of that, I guess, where it's like, no, she can actually self-harm with that personality, as opposed to just doing it sort of as is. But I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say to
No, I get you. Yeah, I think it's like it's something we've seen done before. So if you are going to have this kind of twist or add this element, to your work, there has to be something more interesting about it, like a better reason for it, versus like, if you're just doing it to feel like you have a twist, or to give audiences like some type of shock or something. It doesn't really feel like that interesting. And again, at the time, like, that maybe, it wasn't as cliche yet. Like, obviously there had already been examples of it, but, maybe it still seemed like a little less, like hacky or something. But yeah, watching it now, when it's just kind of like, that's one of those things you joke about when you're talking about like, cliche stuff in movies, that it just doesn't feel like as much of a surprise, or something that interesting to do.
Yeah, and the sad part is that because the twist is such what the movie revolves around, is that a lot of the film I spent my time just thinking about how it works in each scene, as opposed to like maybe like taking the drama as it was sort of at face value. I was constantly thinking about, okay, in this scene when the dad's at dinner with both of them, like how is this working with in mind that only one of them is real. Because that was the other thing, because the scene where his uncle, or the uncle comes over, his brother presumably, with his wife, and they're having dinner, and it's the daughter's not there. It's just Unju, the stepmom version of her character, and she's just sitting there telling stories, and everyone, the dad, the uncle, the uncle's wife, they're all sitting there just really awkwardly listening to these stories. But she's going on as if she's speaking about old times. She's reminiscing and she's laughing, and it's like everyone else is supposed to be laughing along with her, but everyone's just sitting there awkwardly, like it's a really depressing experience. And it makes sense in the context of, well, because this is his daughter, because this is really, the guy's daughter, who thinks that she's someone else, talking about stories that never happened, and it's coming across as genuinely crazy. It's coming across as genuinely psychotic, and they're all just sitting there kind of sad. Like, that scene makes a lot of sense in the context of what the twist is. So I can't really fault that. Like, it does mostly work. If you go back through the movie and look at all the scenes, it lines up with what we're seeing in each scene. I think that the problem perhaps with the movie for me is that it almost feels like that was what the main focus was, is making sure it does work. Is like,
Yeah.
you know, just going back, like when they wrote the script, it was like, okay, and when they were filming it, how do we make sure this all works when the twist happens? And don't get me wrong, that's important. You should make sure everything works if you've got a twist, but I just feel like that was the sole focus of the movie, as opposed to actually making a compelling character story on its own.
Yeah.
It was actually satisfying from going to point A to point B, where we care about the arc, we care about, because all the stuff where she's concerned about the stepmom and it's this rivalry with the stepmom, I never found myself that engaged with that.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Let it out, Tim. Let it out.
No, like I think the problem is because I knew the sister was going to turn out to be dead, but I didn't realize that the stepmom was also a fake personality. But like you said, even if the scene works, the problem is when you're watching it, if you don't realize that, then it just makes the scene kind of confusing. So like I do remember that dinner scene being very confusing, because everyone's like looking at the stepmom weird, and I'm like, okay, so is the stepmom crazy then? Like, is that gonna be like a whole thing then, like where we're dealing with like this this crazy stepmom? But like it's cool that it makes sense after you know the fact, but while you're watching it, it's just kind of like weird. Be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think the horror elements are do feel kind of weirdly tacked on in places. Like, you know, there's a couple of, I mean, it's executed fairly well. There's a couple of bumps in the night, and then, you know, there's this dream that she has at one point of her dead mother like showing up, and this is the one scene where it's like, hey, all those other Asian horror movies that are successful, and this is probably why we got the budget to make this. I mean, it was a low budget. It was only made for $1 million. It's not a high budget movie, but it means. Which, you know, great. I applaud them for doing the, you know, trying to make a movie on that. I really do. But you know, but this is the scene where the hair's over the face and her head's kind of crooked to one side, as if she's been hanged. You know, it is very much doing the Asian horror thing. And even more of a Japanese horror thing. Obviously, this is a Korean movie, but I think we associate that long-haired ghost more with Japan, because, you know, The Ring and The Grudge are both Japan, so that's very much J-horror, as it were. But Korea did try to get on that a little bit with a few movies, and this just does it in like that scene basically, and then there's one horror scene at the end, or right before the end, I should say. So
I guess, like, would you say there is a ghost in the house then?
There is, because I mean, I didn't think there was, but after they reveal that the sister's actually dead, right? The dad brings that up because he's like, "What are you doing? Stop talking about your dead sister." We get the sort of the bigger reveals that were when we find out that the real woman that Yoon-ju is, who's like this therapist or whoever, who was engaged to her father. We'll get to that in the flashbacks, I suppose, but they're not together just now. She shows up to sort of prove that, like, you know, you're sick. Like, you're not me. I'm not here, kind of thing. Like, I'm separate. I'm living somewhere else. And she's not like the person we know either. She's a lot more business-like and cold and I guess normal, maybe is the way to put it. But she once we find that out, they send Sumi back to a hospital because she's going obviously crazy. But then we get this sequence, and this is the part that I thought should have come at the end after the flashback. We get this sequence where Yoon-ju, the not stepmom, is in the house, and she's the real one, and she's looking around the house, and she ends up finding the ghost of the little sister in the closet, who then seems to kill her. And then there's like a shot of Sumi in bed at the hospital, sort of like almost smiling as if she's at peace finally. And that was kind of like, okay, so this is your ending, where the ghost of the sister's gotten revenge on Yoon-ju. The problem is that the flashback that explains why revenge is needed comes after this. And I thought that was so weird. Like, why not give us the flashback first? Give us context that she did this awful thing, why vengeance is needed, why Sumi is so messed up, and it comes at the very end, but it feels kind of like, why not just swap those two parts? Like, end it with Yoon-ju's death, and Sumi smiling, and cut to credits on like a really sort of dark moment kind of thing. Instead, we get the flashback afterwards, and we find out that the dad was engaged to this new woman, this Yoonju, and as a result of this, the daughters were unhappy, and his previous wife, their mother, hanged herself in the closet, and that was the closet that throughout the film the sister kept getting put in or hiding or was trapped in by Yoonju. There was a whole sequence with that in the middle, and when the younger sister finds her mother's body and tries to help her, the closet topples over and crushes her and eventually kills her. And Yoonju heard this, was going to help and intervene and like save her, but when Sumi passes on the hallway and kind of like says she's been horrible and she doesn't want her here or whatever, Yoonju basically makes the choice out of spite to not save her sister, and this is why vengeance is needed. So again, the things that are important here, the idea of her mother being hanged, the idea of the sister being put in the closet, all these things are these little thematic things that are sort of paid off in this flashback, and this is where they all come from. That's fine. I don't understand why it comes after the vengeance scene, though. It feels like we should do that after the reveal and then have the final sort of sequence of the revenge happening. But I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a taste thing, but
no, yeah, I mean that's fair. Like it's not like a bad idea for a story. I feel like I wish I would have gotten more of like a vengeful spirit, like kind of tormenting the sister, or maybe having her express like more feelings of like guilt and regret or something, versus I don't know if you really need the like the multiple personality kind of thing. Like it might just be better to just show her and maybe try and deal with stuff, and then having these like weird ghost manifestations.
Yeah, maybe. I think another problem for me is that I don't really feel like Yoonju, the real Yoonju that is developed enough for me to care about the vengeance. Like,
sure.
I don't know. Like, she's kind of, I mean, she's vindictive in the way she's like, okay, you're going to regret this moment someday. The idea being that she's making that choice right now to not go save her sister, and that's why she's, deserving of the vengeance that's going to come. But I don't know, but we don't know that when she's actually killed. So it feels weird, and it's a ghost that only has one victim. It's not like a constant horror movie, which is why I think we say it's more of a horror drama, where the family drama comes first, and it's kind of psychological, and there's things going on, and we get the twist, and then we get like there's like a couple of big horror scenes, and that's kind of it. But it does feel very light on the horror. It feels only just a horror movie and no more.
So is it the sister then that the aunt or whatever sees like under the sink when she has like the seizure?
Presumably, yeah, because she looked young, so I would presume so.
That's like such like a weird like tacked on thing too. Like I don't know if they just like, all right, we got to have like another like quick horror scene in the middle of the movie or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be more was going to come of those characters. They never come back. the uncle and his wife just disappear, because I felt like it was going to be more of a plot point, or because on the way home he says, "Oh, I didn't want to go. I only came because he said because your dad asked me to," or something like that, which is a weird line, given that we don't really know her family or meet her family or know why that's important. I don't know.
Yeah,
weird. But. Very odd. It's a frustrating movie because I do think it's very well directed, and I think the performances are very good. I think we have a very solid execution outside of the order of the last couple of scenes for what the idea is. I think ultimately I just don't think there's enough in the idea. I mean, maybe it's just dated. I mean, maybe this is the thing. Maybe this worked better in 2003.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think that is like a good sign though. Like when we watch other bad movies and it's kind of like, you never want to see something from that director again. Like this is not something that would put me off like this filmmaker. Like honestly, I would say I didn't really enjoy this movie that much, but I can see where there's skill in the filmmaking, and I would still like I wouldn't be against like watching other stuff from this person. And I mean, like you said, when you listen to some of his other things, like he has gone on and done like really good stuff.
Yeah, they're not horror movies, but they're really solid movies. I saw The Devil's a great thriller.
It's fantastic. I think that's the only one that I saw that you listed, but that is amazing.
And A Better Sweet Life's a really good gangster movie, Korean gangster movie.
Okay.
And I don't really like gangster movies typically, but I really like that one, so I'd recommend that. Good, the Bad, and the Weird was fun enough. Probably not as good as the other two that I mentioned, but I like it's a really good director, and I it's frustrating seeing a movie like this by a director you like, and I guess it's weird because the last Vogt movie we did was The Fog, and we had a very similar kind of element about that.
Oh
where,
yeah, actually,
we love John Carpenter, but that's definitely one of his weaker movies for us. Not the weakest end, obviously. It's not like Escape from LA or like those later things that are disasters.
Yeah, I mean, you could say all the Vogt winners this month were like weaker entries from really good directors.
What was the first one?
Piranha.
Oh yeah, Joe Dante. You're right. That was the theme this October apparently. all the votes were directors who are otherwise great, but for some reason made a okay movie. Because I don't think any of them are bad. I don't think this, The Fog, or Piranha are bad movies.
No, not at all.
They're all decent, okay to decent.
Again, like there's, even if something maybe isn't necessarily your cup of tea, or maybe it's like a little boring, or you just don't feel invested in it, you can still separate like when it's good filmmaking versus like a lot of the generic stupid crap that we watch that's just like, all right, well, this is just a mess on many levels. Like I think a lot of these movies, it's just like, oh, you know what, this isn't bad, but it's not really doing much for me.
Yeah. I don't know.
And obviously it's not this movie's fault or anything at all. Like two very different movies, but I had like when I watched this, I'd actually just recently went to the movies to watch another Korean film, which was an absolute masterpiece. I saw Parasite yesterday, which, oh my God, it was so good. And it's not a horror movie, obviously, but I was on like a kick, so I was kind of excited, like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna watch like another like cool Korean movie, and then I was a little let down by this one.
Yeah. So I mean, there's character stuff there. I think like,
sure,
obviously she pretends to be the person who let her sister die because she feels guilty about not saving her herself. Like, there's definitely a little character details that you can take from that and kind of explore a little bit. I just wish the actual bulk of the movie, the actual conflict, which for the most part is this sort of fake fight between Sumi and her stepmom, and again, yes, there's some interesting things to kind of like pull from that once you realize that they're just both parts of her personality kind of fighting out with each other. But it's just the guilt within her head, it's the struggle in her head, like sort of fighting for dominance, and not accepting the death, and blaming the person responsible, and everything else in between. But ultimately the actual core struggle between them isn't that exciting, and I think part of the reason why it isn't that exciting is because the little sister does feel kind of like disconnected, where she does just feel like a prop.
That's true, yeah.
She never feels like she's her own character, and it kind of makes sense when you find out she's not really there. She is just like in her head, but she always feels disconnected, and it never feels meaningful because of that to me. But maybe people disagree, I know people like this movie, so maybe people will disagree with us on this one. I'm not sure.
Maybe. I mean, that is a good point too. Like, I feel like the sister doesn't really like do much in the movie, which you think, if a lot of the movie is kind of hinging on, this twist of her being dead, that she would maybe be a little more prominent or have, more to do. So it's, a bit more of a surprise and a shock. But yeah, she ultimately, I feel like you forget about her a lot of the movie.
We do. Again, all directing touch is nice though. Is when they first appear at the start. Like we see the little sister first when she gets out of the car, and she goes over and like smells some flowers, and it's all sunny and pretty, and it's this really sort of idyllic little moment. And and Sumi's just kind of watching her, kind of like happy watching her sister. It's this idyllic memory of her sister. Like the version she's created is kind of this happy, perfect, kind of like, oh, my little sister who I love kind of thing. Like again. Direction, execution, and all that stuff is really good, but I just don't feel most of the story, unfortunately. So, yeah, I guess that's that. Tim, what are you going to rate A Tale of Two Sisters?
It is a tough one to rate. I can't go like too low because it's not like it's a poorly made movie. But again, I wasn't really feeling it, so I can't go too high. So I think I'm gonna just go straight down the middle and give it a 5. Which, I don't want to go lower than that because it's a well-made movie from good directors and performers and everything. But I don't think I can go higher because I don't think there was much that really grabbed my attention or interested me or would make me really want to revisit it anytime soon. So yeah, it's a straight 5 for me.
Yeah, I'm going to say 5.5. I don't think I can quite put it in that mediocre line because the execution is so strong and confident.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't love it, and that may shock some people. It may us giving it a 5 and a 5.5 may actually really shock some people.
I do wonder though, like the people that might be shocked, if you look at the movie, that's totally fine. But people that are really surprised about it, I do wonder how many of them have watched it recently. Because like you said, it might be, at the time, it is a well-known movie, and then you kind of just take it for granted, like, oh no, yeah, that was a good movie, and then, maybe if you haven't seen it in a while, maybe go check it out again, which oddly enough was like hard to find for me. Hopefully people have an easier time if they want to revisit it.
Yeah. There you go. So yeah, that's Tale of Two Sisters. That is the last of the voted for movies for October. We're not quite done yet. There's still about, I don't know when this is going up, but I think there's maybe a week or just under a week left of episodes still to come. But hopefully enjoying the Octoberthon. If you are, you can of course like and subscribe and ding the bell to make sure you get notifications. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month, and for that $1 you'll get a bonus episode of Screams every single month, and in fact during October you're getting 4. So there's a whole little back catalogue now. I think with the Wishmaster movies it puts us up to about 10 or 11 episodes exclusive to Patreon. So a nice little back catalogue if you sign up. But if you do that, you can go to the higher tiers as well, where you get to vote and things like that. So have a look at that and see if you want to support us that way, or you can do it of course by rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts, giving us 5 stars. Helps them spread us out a little bit more people will find us that way. You can of course follow us on Twitter at Screams Midnight, so do that too. But that's basically us for this episode. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.